Nobody wins their fantasy football league on draft day, but you can cause yourself so much harm by making bad picks. Each platform has got inefficiencies. Each platform has got players you don't want to take. These are the 10 worst picks you can make on Yahoo through the first 10 rounds. Round 1, with an ADP of 8th overall, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown as a player, but if Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta make second-year leaps, which is not uncommon for players, we talk about second-year players taking the leap all the time. If Jameson Williams finally turns everything around after a clean offseason, then it could all add up to eating the Browns' volume somewhat. Not to mention the fact that the defense, it looks like it's going to be so much better this year. They're not going to get into as many shootouts. That's going to improve the team's efficiency overall. There could be much less passing volume all round. Round 2, Saquon Barkley going at pick 14. Yes, Saquon is playing on the best offense of his career, but there's still plenty of reasons to be avoiding him. According to Jacob Gibbs of CBS, Saquon averaged 12.9% avoided tackle rate over the last 3 years. That's lower than both DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders, for reference, guys who've recently been on the Eagles. Barkley, he's also not adding as much in the receiving game as you'd think. He averages 293 receiving yards per season over the last 3 years, falling below 1.0 yards per route run in 2 of the last 3, and he's not been above 1.5, which is kind of the benchmark for really good running back seasons since his rookie season. The Eagles, they don't throw the ball to the running backs that often. They threw to them at the 12th lowest rate last year, and that is before we get into the fact that Jalen Hurts near the goal line is an absolute monster. Last year, he had 16 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line, which was the 8th most among all players, and converted 13 of those 16 into touchdowns. It's just a really difficult click for me. Hit that subscribe button. We got loads of redraft content coming your way at the minute. Videos from JJ Zachariason, Andrew Erickson, Pete Overzet, John Paulson and 4 for 4. Loads of advice. No matter which platform you're drafting on, we will get you set up to win in 2024. Josh Jacobs, pick 33. I don't hate Josh Jacobs as a player, and I think if you can get him later, then he's an okay pick. But here, in the middle of the 3rd round, it just feels a little bit pricey for a player who's been so volume dependent over the years. We know he's not a particularly efficient player. We know that he's not an elite pass catcher. So it all kind of adds up to be like, okay, well, if we take away some of that volume, is he still going to be worth it? The Packers are really high on Marshawn Lloyd, who is dealing with a hamstring injury right now. That doesn't mean that Marshawn Lloyd can eat into Josh Jacobs' production at a time when you're really going to need it later on in the year. Add in the fact that Jordan Love is one of the most aggressive passers in the NFL, really likes to drive the ball downfield, and it makes you worry that maybe he's not going to check down the ball to Josh Jacobs. I like Josh Jacobs, but not at this cost. Round 4, Joe Mixon. Pick 42 is just way too high for Joe Mixon. Mixon hasn't been healthy all offseason. He's only just now getting to a point where he can practice. He's not taking part in the fully padded stuff yet. It requires a leap of faith with Joe Mixon. Over the years, he's struggled with injuries plenty of times. And now you're telling me that a player who's unhealthy at this point in his career should be going in the top 4 rounds. I struggle with that. He's been heavily touchdown reliant over the last few years. His overall stats have been padded out by these one-off games where he'll score 3, 4, 5 touchdowns in one game, which is incredible when you've got him, but it rather takes away the fact that when he's not scoring like that, he can be a bit of a hindrance to your fantasy team. There's mixed reports out there about how good Dameon Pierce looks. Cam Akers has surpassed expectations in preseason. Jawad Jordan was drafted by this team. It wouldn't be surprising to see at least one of those mix in heavily through the season. Round 5, George Pickens, pick 51. Look, the Steelers, they know how to develop wide receivers. Deontay Johnson was a favorite pick of mine for years. But George Pickens, when it comes to redraft, he's a better in best ball type player. He had 7 top 12 weekly finishes in the last 2 years, but he had 17 finishes as the wide receiver 40 or worse. It's not like the Steelers seem to have the utmost faith in Pickens either, because they've spent the last couple of weeks pursuing Brandon Ayuk and try to trade for him. If that's the case, then it surely says something about what they think of George Pickens' ability to hit his ceiling. He'll be eligible for a contract this year. He wants to play up big, but the Steelers, they don't seem to be ready to give him the ball as often as he'd like. Add in the fact that no wide receiver in an Arthur Smith offense has ever had more than 72 receptions across Arthur Smith's time at both Atlanta and Tennessee. The quarterback situation, it's going to be problematic. Justin Fields might start the season. Russell Wilson might start the season. They're nice big play passes, but there's no rhythm to them. There's no consistency with them. It's going to be problematic. And this offense, it's just set up for the running game. And I'd much rather have either Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren. Round 6, Zamir White available at pick 70. Zamir White came on so well down the stretch last season. I think quite often we get into this situation where we romanticize these players who have big performances around the playoffs. Over those final 3 weeks of the season, White averaged 95 rushing yards per game, which was 4th most among running backs. That's good, obviously, but his 1.7% touchdown rate was the 2nd lowest among running backs to score a touchdown in that spell. He wasn't getting any goal line work. He wasn't getting in the end zone. When he was breaking runs, he wasn't getting to the end zone. Alexander Mattison is mixing in preseason to exactly the same kind of level as Zamir White. That tells you that the coaches, they view him quite equal. We're also seeing Dylan Laub taking the snaps inside the 2-minute warning, which is a really valuable role. If Zamir White doesn't have a valuable role and he doesn't have the volume to just carry him throughout, then he could be a really classic dead zone running back type. If you agree with me, or even if you don't agree with me, I want you to leave me a comment. Every single subscriber who leaves a comment on the Fantasy Sanctuary channel this summer gets entered into our summer giveaway as we close in on 3,000 subscribers. $100 in cold hard cash, $25 merchandise voucher for our store, and 12 months membership to all our premium content, including my weekly DFS write-up, best ball redraft rankings, Rich's weekly rankings, Rich's dynasty content, trade calculator, and so much more. Round 7, DeAndre Swift, pick 78. He's already injured. This has been the problem which DeAndre Swift's dealt with throughout his career. He can't stay on the field. He's been unable to play in any of the preseason games due to injury. The team have said due to injury rather than just holding him out because they view him as a starter. They've played plenty of their starters. And teams, they seem to sour on the DeAndre Swift experience fairly quickly. It was only last year he signed with the Eagles. Lasted 1 year before they went out and decided they wanted to upgrade to Saquon Barkley. How much of what DeAndre Swift did last year was that of the Eagles' offensive line, which we know was excellent? The Bears' offensive line, it's going to be good, but it's not going to be excellent. Swift, it just feels like he's stuck in a three-way committee. There's Roschon Johnson, who this team drafted last year, who is an excellent pass protector. He's a good pass catcher. Then you've got Khalil Herbert, who's a really solid between the tackles runner. Now, if those players have those kind of roles and mix in for those, what does it leave DeAndre Swift to do? I don't think you can take DeAndre Swift this far ahead of Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson with any confidence. Round 8, pick 94, Jake Ferguson. Look, it was a really impressive campaign for Jake Ferguson last year. Led all tight ends in red zone targets with 24. That's 3 more than any other player. Wide receiver, running back, tight end, any other player. He was also second on the Cowboys with a target share of 17%, which again, it's impressive, but what we know isn't sticky is the touchdowns. And if you take away Jake Ferguson's touchdowns, his fantasy performances, he wasn't able to accumulate enough volume at times to make him really fantasy viable. I worry that Jake Ferguson is going to see regression in the touchdown department, not see as many end zone looks, and it's not going to look pretty. And when I get to this range of a draft, I just never want to take Jake Ferguson. I've done over 300 best ball drafts this summer, and I've got 1% exposure to Jake Ferguson. Round 9, ADP of 107, it's Jameson Williams, and I'm not a Lions hater. Honestly, I've got 2 Lions players in this video. Love the Lions, but I just don't think there's going to be enough volume here for Jameson Williams. We're talking about what, the 3rd, 4th, 5th option on this team behind Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe even David Montgomery. And I do give Jameson Williams a bit of a pass for how his career started. The injury that he came into the NFL with, that was unavoidable. The gambling suspension, you can blame him for that, that's fine. But again, it's not something that we typically see from players, so holding it against him that he hasn't played many games, it's a bit tricky. But I still can't think that there's going to be enough volume for Jameson Williams to be out there scoring good points in redraft leagues. Jameson Williams is the classic better in best ball type player. Round 10, Trey Benson going at pick 118. Every single time the Cardinal coaching staff are asked about Trey Benson, it's not good. You'll hear them talk about the fact that he just needs to get better at everything. A reporter will be like, oh, what is it that Trey Benson needs to do to get on the field? And immediately Jonathan Gannon's like, everything. He needs to be doing this better than Michael Carter, this better than Amari DiMercado, this better than James Conner. And that's a big hill to climb. Perhaps the Cardinals, they don't keep DiMercado around. They don't keep Michael Carter around. And it's a clearer path for Trey Benson, who as a rookie, plenty of people really liked. But right now, Michael Carter, DiMercado, they're mixing in plenty in preseason. And everything the team says is that they want James Conner to handle the ball a lot this year. 118 is too expensive. If you can get him around about 140, 150, then I don't mind that. But right now, I can't click Trey Benson. Those are the worst picks in the first 10 rounds of Yahoo leagues. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about it. Go and watch this video from JJ Zacharyson, the late round QB, talking about his 3 favorite picks in every draft, who he wants to draft every single time he can.